Good afternoon to you. Mark Sutton with HurricaneTrack.com here with your Hurricane Outlook and discussion for Friday the 25th of September 2015. Not much happening in the tropics in terms of anything particularly intense in any one location. We have what are pretty much the remnants of Ida sitting out here over the open Atlantic. Pretty tired of talking about that, as is probably most people, as are most people. We do have this area worth watching that could eventually try to develop into something. What that something is remains to be seen. You can see the potential track area here into the Gulf of Mexico over the next several days. And then in the eastern Pacific, thanks in part to a more favorable MJO setting up across this region, a couple of areas to watch. This one in particular could threaten Mexico as a tropical cyclone, either a depression or a storm, maybe a hurricane over the next few days. And really, this is going to be something to watch for interest along the Mexican coastline here. So be sure to refer to the National Hurricane Center site for the latest info on that. I will cover it over the weekend in the blog as well. Now, looking at a satellite shot of the Atlantic Basin, visible satellite image, you can see the remnants of Ida here. Very well defined low-level center, but again, the shear blowing in the wind. The shear blowing the tops off of the thunderstorms continues. Pretty good feeder band all the way down into the deep tropics, trying to keep this thing alive, but it's not meant to be. Now, I want to go back to the satellite picture page here and show you the water vapor imagery of the Atlantic Basin here. This is a great shot. Hopefully it'll let me just look at the image, and it will. Very good. See, we have this upper level low here. This is kind of like an X-ray of the atmosphere. It's not an X-ray, but that's what it looks like to me, because you can see sort of like the bones and the soft tissue and whatever of the atmosphere. And in this case, you can see water vapor or the lack thereof, and it allows you to see different features. And so we have this upper level disturbance sitting over parts of Alabama, southern Tennessee, and Georgia, and then a surface trough along the western Atlantic, and then a very deep moisture plume coming all the way out of the tropics, feeding into the right-hand side of this upper level low, and that has brought tremendous amounts of rainfall, even some severe weather with a tornado last night in parts of the Charleston area, St. John Island. You're tapping into all this energy that's down here and pulling it up into the eastern part of the United States. So by hook or by crook, the tropics are lending their effects into our sensible weather. But in this case, it's not from a singular system coming out and making landfall in some particular spot, so to speak, rather than it's this big upper level low helping to tap into this deep tropical moisture. Remember, the water temperatures in this region are a lot warmer than they normally are this time of year, and so there is ample precipitable water being pulled into this system, i.e. energy. And then down here across Central America, we do have a disturbance in the southeast Pacific, general lowering of pressures across this region, and then an upper level trough is going to carve out over here, a surface reflection of that probable heading into the Texas coastal waters, with another surface low likely heading into the Florida Panhandle early next week. A very complex weather situation with a lot of people being affected by minimal to moderate impact type weather, if that makes sense. So you're going to have a very large geographic area covered with nuisance weather is the best way to put it. And part of that is the Outer Banks of North Carolina. I want to show you this from the National Weather Service. This coming from the Manteo-Dare County area for the next several days through Sunday here. High surf advisory and all kinds of flood advisories, etc. for the area. Breezy, rainy conditions. If we scroll down here and look at the discussion, that forecast discussion, I really enjoy this. Lots of information in here. And then I like to see, in terms of the tides and the flooding, right through here, this paragraph tells you what you need to know. That as of this morning, the coastal flood advisory will be extended for Dare County into Sunday, because moderate to strong onshore winds will continue along the Outer Banks into the weekend. And in fact, I can show you that in just a moment. Looking at the wide radar shot of the region, our coastal trough, see the upper level low sitting over here. Then you have this coastal trough with little waves of low pressure that form on it. and the heaviest of the precip over eastern North Carolina right now. This part of the southeast could really use some rain. Luckily, there is some of that falling, and I think this disturbance that comes out of the Gulf could add some beneficial rain to the southeast as we get into next week as well. Now, looking at the GFS over the next several days, this is the initial setup, our coastal trough sitting in here roughly. But watch what happens as I move through the time frame here into the weekend. This is this afternoon into tonight, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, going on through time, and you notice sort of a bending of the isobars in here, low pressure, little wave of low pressure trying to form along that coastal trough, going on out into time. Very heavy precip right over the Outer Banks and extreme northeast North Carolina, southeast Virginia. And then you've got this strong pressure gradient because of high pressure over New England and what we call this fetch, this wind blowing across hundreds of miles of the ocean and aiming that right towards the coast is going to continue to pile up the water at the times of high tide especially, and that's just going to create more problems during those high tide cycles. And this goes on through Saturday night. Finally, it lifts out, tries to develop, more of a low pressure wave, if you will, trying to close off a low as this moves on up into the waters just south of Delaware and east and west of there. I mean, Steve, one of our subscribers, was talking about can't even get a thunderstorm up in there. It looks like all this mess will avoid Delaware as well. Then down in the Gulf of Mexico, another big plume of moisture coming in as an upper level trough is going to carve out over this region and tap into some of this Gulf moisture over the next few days. And if we move out into time, you can see a broad area, comma-shaped low pressure forms over the Gulf, and it's headed towards the Florida Panhandle. Heavy rain at times, maybe breezy conditions, a little bit of water rises along the shallow coastal shelf waters of the Mississippi Sound. Some of those areas, a little bit of an increase in the surf, but really just a nuisance, a real pain in the butt, especially for your morning and afternoon commutes across the I-10 corridor in any of the big cities, Pensacola, Mobile, and across even sections of Mississippi and possibly southeast Louisiana. So no one area of, oh, here comes Hurricane so-and-so, but lots of other stuff happening, tapping into that very warm water around the continent, but nothing bundling the energy and focusing right now. And that's just the way it is. We saw that at the end of 2010 in September and October. Really didn't have much after the big hurricanes earlier in that season, including Igor. We also had one Earl off the coast of North Carolina in August. But then in September, it was just more of a low pressure in the western Atlantic basin tapping into those very warm waters, and we never really saw any big-time hurricane at the end of the 2010 season. So sometimes this will happen, and sometimes you get a big one to end it all, like 2012 with Sandy that tapped into that warm water. So you just never know. As the Forrest Gump phrase goes, it's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. And in this case, it's a bunch of wet chocolate out there, that's for sure, with all the moisture. So for the drought-stricken regions of the southeast, this is good news. If we can just keep the tornadoes at night or any time from forming like we had in South Carolina, that would be a plus, and not too much rain all at once. So anyway, that's it. Hopefully you are up to date as we head into the weekend. I'll be posting blog updates on the website and another video for you on Monday. I am Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com. Have a great weekend out there, and I'll talk to you early next week.